Well, here we are. It is Friday, May 30th, 2025, and this is the weekly video. We do these each week. We take a look at what's been going on in the Asian and Asian art market in the auction world, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, whatever comes along that looks interesting, as well as we talk a bit about carpets, and more we've been talking about Western furniture, American furniture, English furniture, whatever turns up on the auction scene, because it represents such a phenomenal buyer, and it's beautiful handmade things are always worth living with. And of course, Asian art looks great on used as with Western antiques. It all melds together so nicely. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about some results that we didn't cover yesterday on that video we did. That was we put a video up over here on YouTube, just sharing with everybody what we do over on the Patreon side each week with extra videos here and there. Each week we do one called My Watch Page, and we talk about things that are on there. And yesterday we shared that over here to give folks an idea, because people ask, they say, well, what are the videos? Are they different? They're a little different. Yeah, they are. They're more relaxed. And so forth. And we talked about some auction results that happened. So we've already talked about those. So we won't cover that ground again on this video. But if you want to see them, go over to YouTube and here on YouTube, and you can scroll down and watch that next. Any rate, one of the things that a number of people have noticed, I saw it in the comments, about the newsletter page on bidamount.com, we've gotten away from eBay. Now, we started with eBay. We've been doing them there. As you can see, we've done 584 newsletters in the last 10 or so years, a little over 10 years. And it was always about eBay listings that we find that we think are interesting, the maybe a good value for somebody and so forth. And increasingly, there's been less and less on there worth looking at. The site is for auction stuff is sort of dying, frankly, and it's being inundated with. I always hoped that the sellers of fakes would get kicked off or something. Woolworths and those guys and Ancient Rhyme and all these people that are constantly putting up phony fake objects. eBay is going to kick them off. And they've lost a lot of good sellers because of the eBay's payment policies, where they don't enforce payment on bidders at auctions, which is unheard of in the real auction world. If you go to an auction anywhere and sit down and bid, you're going to pay your bill one way or the other, either through a court or sheriff's going to come visit you. You're going to get your bank account grabbed. You can't do that. But at any rate, the buyers in China never got the message on that, and they think that paying your bill is an option whether you do or not. So it's caused a real problem in the auction market. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. So what we're going to do is we're going to start taking the newsletter page and probably putting other content in there. Right now, just to keep something on there, we threw in some very interesting lots that many of them sold this past week. The William Smith sale. We've got the Marco Polo sale in there, which hasn't sold yet. Just for people to look at, something to go and scout around and see what's on there. Now, that's sort of some of those links that come from the global member pages. We're sort of sharing sort of a microcosm of what's over there, over here, just for fun for now. And eventually, we're gonna do something with it, and I'll let you know what it is once we get to that. Once we get a plan put together. All right. Now, I want to talk about a couple of sales that finished just this past week that we haven't talked about yet. And this was the one up in Canada. This was the A.H. Wilkins sale, and they had this painting. I loved this painting. I thought this was a great painting. I talked about it a few weeks ago in the preview. I thought the estimate was more than reasonable, low, and this is a very good painting. It was done probably around 1800 to 1810, meticulously done, beautiful detail. And they just called it a painting of a domestic scene. It's not I don't believe this is a domestic scene. I believe this is a port painter's vision of what a scene inside the Imperial Palace looks like, because the woman dressed in the moon window there clearly isn't your typical Chinese domestic. It's not your standard domestic scene. Obviously, she's a very important person. She's wearing a beautiful dragon robe. She's putting on a very elegant court headdress. So she's either a concubine or the empress herself. I suspect it's probably a high-ranking concubine more than the Empress, because it would be a little presumptuous for a port painter to do that, to paint the Empress of either Qianlong or Yongchen. So there you are. And the gentleman to the left of the scene is obviously not your typical street guy in China. He's wearing a court robe and a very elegant hat, and he's standing at attention. So there you go. At any rate, the painting did fine. In the end, it sold for 1,593 US plus the premium, so about $2,000 for it. But it was a beautiful, beautiful painting. I think it was an absolute bargain. I think it was a great buy. And then there was this. This is the transitional blue and white jar they had. Ended up going for 1,158 plus the premium. Now, what's interesting, a very similarly decorated jar is going to be coming up at a sale that we're going to talk about later on. That's going on over in Sweden right now. So remember this. It's there because this was a well-known type of transitional ware, particularly with the way the birds are done on the back, the front of the jar. There's the bottom of it. Classic transitional base to it, flat, unglazed, very fine clay, and it did fine. But I think it could have brought more. A number of years ago, I had one of these. I think we got $5,000 or $6,000 for it, as I recall. And so I think this was a bit of a bargain. I'm not sure why, but I think it really, really was. It measured about 10 inches in height, beautifully done. All right. And then popping along over to this, they had a robe in the sale. Very nice 19th century Shifu robe, sold for $57.92 plus premium, or around about $8,000 roughly. But very finely worked and very good for complete sleeves with the hoof cuffs on the ends. Very nice, sort of delicately done, smallish, very nice done gold thread dragons and so forth, and then this big skirt at the bottom with the crashing waves and so forth. This was a nice robe, and it looked like it was in great shape, because a lot of robes, they can have damage, tear, and rot and other issues. This one looked to be in very good shape, and judging by the price, I think it probably had been checked over a number of times, and whoever was doing the checking, the people that were interested in getting it checked, really liked it. And it got a good price. And then there was this. There were two of these in the sale. They were virtually identical. And these were big. These were about 5 feet long. They're actually over 5 feet each. 5 foot square. But very nicely done. Lemon, that soft, almost chiffon yellow ground. Beautiful ground color, and these iron red lotus blossoms on it, with the central scene of the floating castle and so forth underneath peach trees, and all these auspicious fruits and bats and whatnot. I like this a lot. This was a very, very, very nice painting. There's a red-headed heron ascending and so forth. Very classic, and it ended up selling for 20. They both sold at exactly the same price, 2,172 plus premium, or about $2,800. I think these are awfully nice. And again, silk. I keep saying it. Silk is really had some resiliency in the market. And then over to this very nice gilt wood lacquered stand. It measured around 5 inches tall. It was in very good condition. It was very complete. There were no breaks off the animal's tail or head or anything like that. There was one tiny nick or so on the tip of the tail, and that was it, which is peanuts. And when I first saw this, I was kind of curious about it. I wonder what the bottom of it looked like. And I flipped it over, and you'll notice that the bottom of it's very, very clean. And I thought, gee, that's strange. It should have some wear to it. And then I pulled it in a little bit. No, and it's got feet. It's got little shallow feet on it, maybe only a quarter inch or so, or not even a quarter inch. And there you can see all that wear. There's the legitimate wear on here. So the bottom of it wouldn't have any wear at all. It would look just like that. And this was either a late 18th or early 19th century carving, I think, at the latest. They date it as a Ming style carving. I don't think it's Ming, but it's awfully fine quality. And the way the lotus pot is done on the top makes me think it's probably an 18th century example. So if one of you got it, good. Now find something to put on top of it if you want. But I think it looks great all by itself anyway. It went for just $615 plus the premium. So about $700 all done, and inexpensive to ship because of its size, and it's fairly light. It's only 5 inches tall, so it's about this big. I think it's very good. I think that was a very nice object. And then getting down back to the Will Smith sale, we're going to talk a little bit about some Western furniture just for a few lots. So bear with me if you're not interested in it, or skip ahead if you want. Anyway, this was that Dunlop maple, the curly maple chest that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. The Dunlops were famous American cabinet makers in the 18th century. They lived in the Portsmouth, New Hampshire area. They were farmers for most of the year, and then during the winter when they couldn't do much farming, they made furniture. And they had this sort of signature scroll work. They always put at the bottom, not always, but most of the time they put at the bottom, and then these fans arranged in this fashion here. This was a very fine piece of furniture, and in the end, it did well. I watched some of the auction, and when this came up, they were hoping it would do a little better, obviously, because years ago, a chest like this would sell for $60,000 or $80,000. They brought a lot of money. Some of them brought over 100,000. This one sold for the other day sold for about worked out to about 15,000 or so with the premium. But it's still given the health of the lack of health in the American furniture market of the last 15 years. It's good to see somebody having some interest in this. It was estimated at 10 to 30,000 because I think they were just sort of at a loss as to say who knows what this is going to bring. It's an absolutely authentic antique made right around the time of the Revolution. About 1775 they dated it, which I think is about right, but a beautiful, beautiful piece. And then hopping along over to this was without a doubt the bargain of the day. If you've bought chairs lately, you know why. This was a set of four side chairs and two armchair antebellum Southern American Federal chairs made around, they dated them to about 1830. I think that's about right, 1830 or so. Mahogany, beautifully, beautifully carved, wonderful backsplats on them. And if you've ever been to the Baker Furniture site or any of the higher end furniture sites, when they do reproduce chairs like this, they generally sell them for, and this is no joke, $2,000 to $3,000 a chair. That's the list price for these. And this is an antique set with antique mahogany, which you cannot get anymore. The mahogany that's in this chair, in these chairs, and that you see in a lot of these early pieces of furniture, realize it no longer exists on the planet. You cannot buy this kind of mahogany anymore. It's all been cut. It was all cut out. It's horrible to say, but that's what happened. They overforested Cuba and Santo Domingo, where all this wood came from. You cannot buy this mahogany anywhere today of this quality with this figuring, because these were done with very, very old mahogany trees that it was well over a century and a half, 2 centuries old, with giant amounts of color and flair and texture in the grain, and you just don't see them. At any rate, all four of these chairs with the buyer's premium sold for about $550, which is around $75, $80 a chair, which is crazy. And like I said, if you go to a site like Baker or any of the high end sort of furniture makers these days, they all their chairs sell for $2,000 to $3,000 a piece, pretty readily. I'm not talking about IKEA where they sell rubbish, but the companies that are still thought to be fairly good quality, and none of them can compare to these. None of them. So if you get these chairs, it's an absolute steal. And these had leather seats on them. A couple of them did. Some of them had cloth seats. You get them reupholstered. They're easy to reupholster, by the way. These are not difficult chairs to reupholster, because those seats, just so you know, if you're not familiar with it, these seats pop out. Often they're just held in by maybe a single screw, and these seats the seat itself will pop out. It has a wooden frame, and you just take off the old cover and just have somebody put on a new cover. My own mother actually redid seats for a set of dining chairs she bought for her house in Marblehead, Massachusetts when I was a kid, because she knew how to do it. It wasn't that complicated. She just cut some leather and put them on herself, tacked them in, and put them on the chairs, and they lasted forever. At any rate, these were very elegant looking. $400 for the set. And then the Heriz carpet. This was an enormous palace carpet. It was 23 feet long and 12 feet wide, but it was a very lovely Heriz. And according to the auctioneer, when he was selling it, It was in absolutely perfect condition. He thought it would bring more. Now the dealer, the rug dealer Peter Papp, who's been a rug dealer for many many years, he's well known in the rug trade. For a time, he had a store in San Francisco as well as a store in New Hampshire. But he sells very very beautiful carpets and so forth. And I think this was on consignment to him. The auctioneer said for a while, probably while they were settling the estate, trying to get as much as they could for it. And he put a price on this rug of $50,000. Give you some idea. Even with the depressed prices in the rug market, he thought it should be bringing that, and it didn't sell, and they probably ran out of time with the estate or something and had to take it to auction. And this time it did. They sold it, and it ended up going for about 18,000 or 16,000 with the buyer's premium. I guess it was estimated at 20 to 30,000, so it almost got to the low estimate. But an enormous rug, but a unique type of rug because of its size. So you need a room that can take it. You need a space that it would be appropriate for. But it was a very beautiful carpet, and apparently it was in perfect condition. And then over to this is very nice. They just called this a coastal American bow front chest, and I can see why, because to my eyes, it looks like it was from either Essex County here in Massachusetts, sort of in our area, up to the border of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which isn't that far from here. As the crow flies, it's actually right across from us here on Cape Ann, across the bay. You can see Portsmouth from here. It's not that far. It's about 10 miles or so, 15 miles as the crow flies. But in this area, they made these chests. It could be a Portsmouth chest as well, or from southern New Hampshire. But beautiful, beautiful veneer on it, wonderful cross banding. This was a very pretty chest. Now, it had been refinished at some point, obviously, but whoever refinished it knew what he was doing, because the surface is very smooth. It's not super glossy, and you can see all the figuring in the wood absolutely perfectly. And there's the top of it. No splits. No splits on the side of the case, from what I remember. Very nice. The only thing that I can see that they ever did to it was they replaced the runners. If you look underneath drawers, you'll see this area here on the side. If you've ever had a drawer in an antique chest, when you go to pull it out, it sort of gets stuck and you got to wiggle it around to get it out. It's often because the runners are worn out. And the runners, over time, sliding in and out, sort of sand themselves against the guides built into the chest. And it gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and eventually it wears down, and they need to be replaced just from use. That's all it is. So they don't replace the bottom panel. There's no need to. They just replace this little strip. And if you go over to here, you can see it. There it is. So whoever did this was a really good cabinet maker. This was a very nice little repair they did right there. And that was just sheerly from use and wear. And you don't want to own a bureau that you can't open, obviously. So there you go. And you can see a little bit of the varnish here when it was refinished, where it went down over the edges of the mahogany. But that's normal. That's part of the game. Anyway, it went for $1,100 plus premium, or about $1,400 in New Hampshire. And then there was this, a mahogany sideboard, very, very beautiful southern mahogany, Virginia probably they put. I think that's probably right based on the architecture of it. It's got these beautifully done turned front legs and this very nicely figured mahogany veneering on it, very heavily figured. And this, again, this is the mahogany you can't get anymore. This is the mahogany that came out of Cuba and Santo Domingo, and they deforested everything down there by sort of the beginning of the 20th century. They really wiped it out. So now all the mahogany you get in furniture is this sort of fast growth, hybridized mahogany that has very little figuring in it. Typically, it's got some color in it if you varnish it properly, but you don't get the figuring and color shifts that you get. And doing things like these matchbook veneers here in this one, where they can slice it and open it up so that the patterns mirror one another. This was a very, very nice piece of furniture and went for nothing, $700 plus the premium. Half of its high estimate, basically. This was an absolute steal. This is a very beautiful piece of furniture. The only thing I might do to it is I might, if I owned this, I might put brass pulls on it, single pulls on it. It may have had them originally, and they replaced them with wood, which was, again, as I said in the video the other day, it was sort of a thing they did. They replaced brass pulls with wood pulls. And I don't know why. It was sort of a fad, I guess. I'm not sure why they did it. And then the last piece of furniture was this, a very, very rare type of English furniture. This is rare in American furniture too. This is a triple top game table, and you do not see these very often. There was a very famous one here in America that was in the Metropolitan Museum for many years that was made in Newport, Rhode Island. And my business partner and I actually found the mate to it up here in the North Shore. We ended up not getting it. It ended up going to another dealer got there with a cash offer before us. And if you're watching, you know who you are. And he bought the table rightfully, and we've talked about that before. It's a very funny story. And in the end, it ended up with our sort of a mutual friend of ours, Lee Keno, down in New York, and it was an absolutely great rare table. Well, here's an English version. I think this is probably an Irish table. They're saying it's English. I think it looks to me to be Irish, but it's a subtle difference. I like the big turrets on the ends. I like the batwing brasses on it, and these are great tables because you can have a card game on it and have a bunch of friends over, and you can have tea with it. So there you go. So the guys back then would have their card games and their cigars, and then the next day or the day before, the ladies get together and have their tea time at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon with it. Very, very versatile, and then you can fold it up and put it against a wall when you're not using it. There are the brasses. It's just a beautiful table. Look at the price. $350 for the table. This is why I say that table, you couldn't have that table made for less than $5,000 or $6,000. Not with those turrets and all that veneering and a triple top. And there it is. It went for $350 plus premium, or $450, about half the price of a mediocre flat screen television. You get this beautiful, beautiful piece of furniture. Spectacular. Way undervalued, way undervalued. So that's it. That's it for the price reviews. At any rate, just a quick reminder: Marco Polo sale comes up in 4 days. So if you get your registration in, look into it. Make sure you're all set to go. And now I'm going to talk about a couple of sales that are coming up. One of them is at Upsalla over in Sweden, and the other one is at Bukowski's in Sweden. And they're both on the same day as I think they're both on the 13th of this month, and they both have very nice auctions. The very, very nice sales coming up. And this is the, hold on a minute here. There. This is the Upsalla sale. If we've talked about them in a couple of videos, we don't talk about them much. Somebody emailed me and said, are you aware of the sale? And I was aware of it, but I had it sort of slipped my mind, and I thought, well, this is a good thing to talk about right now because there's not a lot of other big sales going on. All the other sales are sort of quieted down for now. You got the Sotheby's sale coming up in Paris, of course, but the other markets. This is the Swedish market. They have this sale is there's 270 or so lots. There's some very nice pieces in it. The links to both of the sales I'm going to talk about will be posted down here on YouTube and on Patreon underneath the video, so you can just hop right over to it and take a look at the catalog. But this is a really, really rare plate. They call it the Gripsholm pattern, and it says Gripsholm on it. And I don't know what Gripsholm actually means, but what I do know is that these plates were. The pattern comes from a set that was made for the King of Sweden in the 18th century, and it was a huge service, 700-piece service. That when they entertained in Sweden, they entertained in a big way, and but most of that service, I believe, is in the National Museum now. But this seems to be a stray plate from that set, or I can't imagine where else it came from. And there it is with the crowns and so forth, and the blue crowns floating around the inside, and then this chain link outer border in gilt. It's quite a thing. This is quite an attractive piece of porcelain. And the estimate, I don't think, is unreasonable at all. If you want a little bit of history, the estimate is $1,500 to $2,000 US, roughly. The Swedish krona is exchanging at about 10 to 1 to the dollar right now. So so divide it by 10, $1,500 to $2,000 for a very rare type. Swedish export wares don't turn up all that often, and something that's tied to the King of Sweden. And they have, I think they covered it down below. King Gustav III, there you are, 1746 to 1792. Anyway, that was who the service was made for. So check that out if you want to own something very, very interesting from a historic standpoint. And if you're one of the collectors out there, if you're a collector who likes these pink lotus pattern 18th century porcelains, you want to check this out. There's 20 pieces of it here, and it's all estimated around 1,500 US for all of it. Now, in the past, we've seen single bowls like this one in the middle sell for $1,500, and they appear to be in great shape. But what's really nice is that this has a very rare, a rare decorated example in it, the tea caddy. You do not see these lotus blossom, lotus bud tea caddies very often. They are extremely rare because they only put one tea caddy typically in with a whole service. So those single pieces can be quite valuable and quite rare. And then there are, of course, all the little side plates and the tea bowls and whatnot. But it's got this very nice tea caddy and these very nice bowls and a bunch of teacups. I think this is a really neat lot. And the estimate, as I said, is just it's 9 to 1,400 pounds, or 9 to 1,400 euros, or 1,000 to 1,500 euros. Will it bring more than that? Probably. I wouldn't be surprised if this brought $4,000 to $6,000 because it's quite an interesting service, and it dates to the Qianlong period, 18th century. All right, it's very, very attractive. And then hopping along over to this, the bronzes. There are a number of good bronzes in the sale. This was one that I liked. It's very powerful looking. And they're dating it. They date conservatively here. They do date things, by the way. These two auction houses we're talking about, they actually put dates on there, and they certainly seem to have somebody that knows what they're doing because the descriptions and everything so far. I went through the sale pretty carefully. If they say 20th century and not Republic, they mean modern. All right, because there are a couple of them. I think at the Bukowski sale, not in this sale that I recall, but in the Bukowski sale, there's one or two pieces they said 20th century. When you see 20th century, think post 1980. All right, but if it says Republic, it's, from what I can see, they're accurate when they say Republic. At any rate, this bronze, this is a very nice one, very classical form. Now, they're dating it as 18th century. I'm thinking, to my mind, it looks a little older than that. It looks more like it's probably mid-17th century, but there's not a huge difference, but it's very nicely done. It has been polished, which is normal. A lot of these were polished, and you can see the polish residue inside the creases and so forth, the cracks around the on the handles on the side. You can see the dried up polish that gets in there and crusts and builds up over time. And that's actually a good thing to see. Now that I've said it, somebody's probably going to start stuffing dried polish into the cracks of things, but that's a good thing to see on these. And the interior of it, when you want to look at the inside of these incense burners were used. So you always want to look inside of them and say, does the usage look legit? All right. And this is what you want to see. That looks pretty legit. Crusty, dirty. If it just looks stained but very smooth, be very, very leery. It's a repro. But in here you have all this gunk and dirt, and then there's some dirt buildup around the edges, which is very often seen on incense burners because of smoke and dirt and crap coming out of it. But very, very nicely done. Beautiful, beautiful looking bronze. And the estimate's very reasonable, is $800 to $1,000. And it certainly should bring that. It should bring 2 or 3,000. And keep in mind, they did used to polish bronzes routinely. They were meant to be polished. And there's a couple of others in here. They very well polished ones, well maintained. That look, maybe they're from the same collection. It's hard to tell, but there's a sort of a cylinder form burner as well. It's awfully good looking. So check that out. And then hopping along over to this, if you're Qingbai, you like sungwares, this is a good thing. This is a water dropper with a dog on top of it. I love this. This is great. And the color is exceptional. The blue, the thickening blue, a pooling of the blue glaze looks very, very good. And this looks completely fine to me. There's some light and dark areas in the handle. The way the animal is potted, very reminiscent of what they did later with some of the Yuan dynasty, the spotted water droppers in the form of dogs and so forth. They were done very, very similarly. And I love the little lumps of clay that they rounded and used for eyeballs. It's just a very great thing. And this is very small. It's only a couple of inches in diameter. Maybe 2 inches. And here's the bottom of it. They have very good photographs. Both of these auctions also, they have excellent photography, I must say. There you go. You get a good, clear shot. I say it often, when you see a piece that you like, of a type of thing that you like, when you come to photograph opportunities like this, screenshot them and save them in a folder. All right, because later you're going to wish you had them. Build up an archive of bases and detailed shots of authentic pieces that you like, because it helps you identify them later if you see them in person. And if you can store it on your phone, it's good. It's pretty handy to have sometimes, because might be out at an auction or in a shop looking at something, and you're trying to remember, is this what the one looked like that you've seen a picture of? So it's always good to have it with you. Anyway, this is a nice looking piece of tea-buy. And the estimate, I think, is ridiculously low, $500 to $600. That's for a very fine piece of Qingbai with that color. I think that is about $1,500 below its value, maybe $2,000 below its value. It's a very rare bird. This is a very, very rare bird. I don't know what it'll bring it, but I can't imagine it'll sell for that estimate. All right, and then hopping along over to this nice big Kangxi Wutsai decorated plate with underglazed blue, and it measures about 9 inches or so. No, how big is this? Let me get this right. But yeah, 9 inches in diameter. There we go. And it has the grooved foot rim that they famously used on Kangxi wares, that they also use on reproductions today. So if you see one of these grooved foot areas, it doesn't mean it's authentic. It just means that somebody knows how to make a grooved foot. But this is, if you look carefully at this one, if you want to take a screenshot of something, copy this picture, because the texture and color of this is what they should look like. Extremely smooth, glassy smooth, very tight, very, very tight, smooth, compact, very pure kaolin on these. And there's the bottom with a few gaps and glazes and so forth that you do expect to see. It is estimated at just $500 or $600 to $800. It should easily get there. Bright colors, very nice colors on this. All right. Oh, one of the things I wanted to mention, some of these auction, some people have commented on it. I've got emails from people saying, well, some of these auction houses want cash deposits. I want to address that a little bit, and I want you to understand why it's an opportunity for you. They do that to protect themselves from miscreants. Mainly buyers from Asia who don't pay their bills. They do it to tie the piece up, and then they try to resell it before they have to pay for it. It's a game. It's a game. And then they walk away from the transaction. They never pay their bills. And as you know, it became such a big problem with the major auction companies a few years ago that they started requiring huge deposits in advance, because they had a number of people that owed them millions and millions of dollars in unpaid invoices, because over there what they were doing is either they didn't pay their bill at all, or they came back after they spent 20, 30, 40 million dollars at an auction. Some of the very wealthy collectors, they wanted to renegotiate the buyer's premium. And they only want to pay 10% instead of paying, the full buyer's premium, which I can understand, but that's not how you do it. That's not how you do it, because it's pretty close to blackmail. And the big auction houses got sick of it, and they said, fine, you have to put up a deposit, and if you play any games, you forfeit the deposit, and you don't get the piece. And that seemed to have taken care of it. But you also have the issue in many European sales where they're faced with the same problem. You've got people that come, they show up for auctions, they register, they buy a bunch of stuff, and then they don't pay for it. Because for some reason, the mainland buyers in particular got it in their heads that paying for your invoice at an auction after you bid is optional. And they just said, well, I don't want it anymore. And that actually does happen. So what they're doing is they're requiring a little bit of deposit, a little bit of good faith. It makes it an opportunity for those who will pay their bills, because you won't be competing against bidders who aren't serious, bidders who are playing games. They won't be participating. It gets rid of a lot of the problems down the road, and it presents an opportunity, and it's smart for the auction house because they have to protect their consigners. So just keep that in mind. They don't ask for it to be a pain in the neck to punish you. They're just they have to set up some sort of rule to protect themselves from certain types of buyers that are there to manipulate and fool around. And just understand that. By being willing to cooperate with those requirements a little bit, you're going to find yourself very often I think increasingly in the position to buy some very good things at very reasonable prices, because the fraudsters aren't involved anymore in the bidding. All right. And I think it's a perfectly reasonable request. All right, now over to this. This is that other jar. Remember, I mentioned a little while ago there was a jar that was very similar to the one that was in the Wilkins sale. Is coming up in this sale. Here it is, and it's nearly identical. This is the thing that's really interesting. It's extremely similar. Same general pattern on the front. Um, There's the back with the birds. This one, I think the other one had 4 birds. This one has got 3. Here's a side shot of it. There are the bamboo trees and so forth. This is a lovely pot too. I think it's as nicely potted from a shape standpoint as what was the Wilkins example. The estimate it's only $400 to $600. It's going to bring more than that. It should bring, based on what the other one brought, it should bring at least 1,500 to 2,000. And I'm a little surprised. I'm a little surprised that the other one only brought a couple of thousand. They generally bring much more than that. So who knows what's going on? But there's the bottom of it. And that looks completely fine. You can see some scrape marks from it being cleaned up and so forth. But in the dirt on the bottom looks completely legitimate. They dated it as Ming because that's what they thought all of these were back once upon a time. And the idea of transitional wares wasn't terribly well understood. All right, and then hopping along over to this brush pot. This is a very nice Kangxi brush pot with a very low estimate, $4,000 to $5,000 estimate in U.S. currency. And this is a very unusual type of decoration with these sort of fish row fill-in areas all around the outside, and then these rounded windows with figures or scholars out in a landscape scene. I think this is a very nice brush pot, and I don't think it's a repro or anything like that. And if you want to take a look at the bottom of it, we talked about these at great length because of the Gallery Zach problem with the reproductions they sold. Here you have what the bottom of one of these should look like. And that's exactly, again, very consistent with what we talked about a couple of weeks ago. You got the bands, the different bands and so forth under the foot in this very nicely finished piece, very smoothly done. I don't see anything wrong with this at all. It looks absolutely fine. I think the estimate it seems awfully low to me. I suspect this pot will bring $12,000 to $18,000. It's estimated at $4,000 to $5,000, unless there's something seriously wrong with it that I'm unaware of. But it's a very unusual type. Now, sometimes unusual types are hard to date too. I mean, hard to value because nobody's going to be able to look that up too readily and find another one that's sold anytime. Not easily. You may find one. But it's not going to be because they never did something. They didn't do a lot of one-offs. They did other similar examples when they were producing these. But I can't remember the last time I saw one that had this pattern. I think it's an awfully interesting piece, and it tapers inward just slightly, which is sort of fun. All right, so that's the Upsalla sale. The link is down below here if you want to go take a ride over there and take a look. And now we're going to take a look at the Bukowski sale that's coming up also on the 13th. This is the front end of the sale. It's furniture and stuff, and then it gets into the Chinese stuff. All right. And I'm going to just take a look through here at some of the pieces. There's some awfully nice looking pieces in here. Now, hold on a second. Did we just lose one? Hold on. I probably have to go back down again. There it is. Okay. We have this. This is a really nice looking Kangxi Kirin jar. And what's interesting about it is it's got the Kirin on the front, and then there are 2 more phoenixes, and it's done in Chinese Amari, Kangxi Amari ware. But it's beautifully done. Gilding is quite intact on the underglazed blue areas. Very nicely done. It measures about 10 inches tall. But what's really great about it's got its lid. These pieces never have their lids. The lid is always long gone. And in the past, we've seen similarly decorated ones, maybe not as fine as this and maybe not with the extra phoenixes. This has 2 phoenixes on it, as I recall, but without the lid. And they generally sell for $1,200 to $1,500 without a lid. This one has a lid, and it's estimated at $1,200 to $1,500. So don't be surprised if it brings $2,500 or $3,000 because it's got this little fella on there. All right, and that does make a big difference. Looks like it's been repaired at some point, which is not unusual for these because lids get taken off, put aside, they fall down, they break. And 9 times out of 10, when lids broke on Chinese porcelain vases, they just threw them out, unfortunately. This one still has it, though it has a repair to it, but it's still there, which is a sort of a miracle. And I think it's awfully attractive. I think it's a very, very attractive example. All right. And then hopping along over to this is a fascinating big jar. And there are a lot of bronzes in this sale too. There's quite a few bronzes. You want to check that out, is this. This thing is 106 centimeters tall. So it is roughly 336, 44 inches in height, something like that with the stand, 92 centimeters without it. So it's 3 feet 2 inches tall without the stand. It's got a stand on it. It's quite nice, but it's meticulously decorated. It looks to date probably from the first half of the 19th century. And it's done on this very nice, it's not a white ground. It's a very, very light, translucent celadon ground, which is very appealing. And it's covered with these very delicately drawn dragons. The quality of the dragon decoration is really stunning. If you look at the details, all that very, very fine patterning they did on the blue dragon here in particular, that's absolutely great. And there are multiple dragons running down this thing. There's one there. There's another one, two on this side, and then they're sort of coiling around and traveling around. And there's a green one on the back, and then there's more tails and more of them over here. Really, really like this vase. It's absolutely beautiful. And as I said, it's big. It's estimated at $5,000 to $7,000 US, roughly. And that's not unreasonable. It seems to me there was one, maybe one of you will remember, there was a similarly decorated dragon vase that was in one of the either Sotheby's or Christie's not long ago. And as I recall, it brought $12,000, $15,000. Somewhere in that price range. You could probably go look it up. But this is an awfully nice example, and it looks like it's in good condition. They claim that there's a star crack in the bottom, and I looked at this photograph pretty carefully, and I couldn't see a star crack anywhere. This doesn't want to blow up. But if you look around here, I don't see a star crack in here. Now, maybe it's underneath some dirt or something, or it's extremely faint, but I don't see it. So you want to find out, you want to get some clarification from them. There's a hint of a little bit of one right in the center of the screen there, but I'm not certain that's it. So you want to check with them. You always want to check for condition anyway when you're buying anything like this. But that's one handsome porcelain vase, and it's huge. It's huge. And then this is a 19th century vase, a huge charger, Chin-Lung style charger with a Chin-Lung mark on it, but it is 19th century, mid or so. It measures 51 centimeters in diameter, so it's about 19 inches wide, almost 20 inches in diameter. It's a very large dish, and has this very nice repeat pattern of 5 dragons going around the inside. On the back of it, it has a Chin-Lung mark on the bottom. But if you look at it, you'll realize it's pretty typical of these later examples. There it is, and that does look like the back of a 19th century dish, but it's enormous. And that's what makes it interesting. It's so big, so big. This is like these giant Japanese pieces you see. The giant Japanese Arita Amari chargers that are 20 inches in wide. Any rate, it's estimated at 12 to 15,000 US. I don't think it's unreasonable because it's so big and it is a legitimate antique. It's not a 20th century repro or anything like that. It's not Republic. It appears to be a mid-19th century example. I like it a great deal. And then hopping along over to this, the Bukowski sale also has this very nice Wan Li period Fu Lion in porcelain, blue and white. And you don't see these very often. You see these often in bronze, and occasionally you see them carved in bamboo, but you don't see them in porcelain very often. And this is a nice one. It measures around 5 or 6 inches in height, but very nicely done. And there's something in the note about it showing signs of wear and use, which means somebody burns quite a lot of incense in it at some point, because you have to burn a lot of incense for it to burn into the porcelain at all. But at any rate, this is it. It's a great looking thing. Very cool. We see the bronze ones all the time, but you don't see the porcelain ones very often. And the estimate, I think, is perfectly reasonable, 3,000 to 5,000. That's what the porcelain ones bring. They bring 3,000 to 5,000. This is, what the bronze examples bring. This is porcelain, and it's estimated the same. So I think this might be a good opportunity. It may go way over it too. You never know, but it's at least worth checking it out. And then hopping along over to this, this is a reminder they have some good bronzes. This very nice Ming Dynasty garlic neck vase with a chimera climbing up the neck. This is a big one too. It was 42 centimeters, so it's about 18 inches. So 18, but yeah, 16 inches in height, roughly 16 inches. The decoration is nicely done all the way down the piece. There we go. Well done, good patina, undisturbed patina. I love the garlic neck on it. It's beautifully done, beautifully ribbed all the way around. I don't see any bends or damage to it. You want to check that out. Again, you want to get a condition report as always, but I think this is something worth checking out. And there are other bronzes in there that are very attractive as well. So both of these auctions are interesting. And whereas they're both in Sweden and they're both, I think they're pretty close to each other. If you decide to buy some things in both sales, I'm sure you can get a shipper over there who'd be willing to pick up, a few lots over here and a few lots over there and get them sent to you. But do it now. You've got 2 weeks until the sale begins. You want to get registered, get your paperwork in order, and go about it. All right. So that's it for the week. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend, everyone. Enjoy your spring, what little is left of it. We're back in the clouds again. It's been nice, though, this week. And thanks again so much for watching. Subscribe here if you haven't. Leave a comment. Tell me if you've bought things at Bukowski's or any of the sales that we talk about, and what your experiences have been. And we'll be back next week. All right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.